Caleb, you are not my biological son, and as such, my financial obligations to you end today. The words from my father, Marcus Harrison, struck the crowded auditorium of Northwood High with the force of a physical blow. A hush fell over the 400 students, parents, and teachers. Even the restless toddler in the bleachers went silent. I was frozen halfway to the stage, my name still echoing from the principal's announcement, called to receive my diploma. The expected swell of applause was replaced by a shocking, public demolition of my life. My name is Caleb, and at 18 I was just publicly disowned by the man who raised me. But as Marcus stood there, convinced he was delivering a crushing final blow, he was oblivious to one critical fact. I had been waiting for this exact moment. I have no duty to fund a college education for someone who shares no blood with me, he continued, his voice as detached as if delivering a quarterly report. He stood in the fourth row, arms crossed, posture radiating corporate authority. It's time you were introduced to the real world. His new wife, Isabel, frantically tugged at his arm, her face a mask of panic. The infant in her arms, my supposed half-brother Noah, began to wail, sensing the suffocating tension. A wave of shocked whispers rippled through the crowd. Hundreds of phones were now pointed in my direction, capturing every agonizing second of this family implosion. Tomorrow, the clip would be everywhere. Teen disowned by dad at graduation. But they didn't know the first thing about the real story. They all expected me to crumble, to flee in a torrent of humiliated tears. That's certainly what Marcus anticipated. Instead, I smiled. It wasn't a pained or defiant smile. It was genuine. The kind my adoptive mother, Eleanor, used to say could light up a room before cancer took her from us 4 years ago. Marcus had just handed me the perfect opening. Well, I said, my voice amplified by the microphone as I walked not to the diploma table, but directly to the podium. Since we're all sharing family truths today, the principal looked confused, but I gently shook my head. I just need to say something. The auditorium became so quiet that the buzz of the overhead lights was audible. I reached into my graduation robe and pulled out a crisp, white envelope, an envelope I had carried with me for 2 weeks, waiting for this very confrontation. Mr. Harrison is correct, I began, locking eyes with him. I am not his biological son. I've known that for years. My mother, Eleanor, told me when I was 12. She made sure I knew I was chosen, that I was wanted. Marcus's confident expression began to crack. This wasn't part of his meticulously planned script. But while we're on the subject of DNA and family ties, I continued, holding up the envelope, let's discuss some other interesting genetic developments. Across the room, Isabel went from pale to ashen. She was shaking her head, mouthing the word no repeatedly. The baby's cries were frantic, but she seemed frozen in her own terror. You know, I said, slowly and deliberately opening the envelope, it's often the people who live in the most fragile of glass houses who are quickest to throw stones. The sound of the paper tearing was deafening in the charged silence. Your son, that beautiful baby you've paraded around for the last 8 months, is not biologically yours, Marcus. An explosion of gasps and shouts erupted. People were on their feet, phones held high to capture the escalating drama. For over a year, Isabel has been having an affair with your brother, Julian, I stated, my voice unwavering despite the thunderous beat of my own heart. The baby she is holding is your nephew, not your son. Marcus collapsed back into his seat, as if his strings had been cut. His mouth hung open, but no words came out. Isabel, letting out a choked sob, scrambled for the exit, stumbling through the rows of chairs with the crying baby in her arms. I have the official DNA test results right here, I announced, holding the papers aloft. A 99.9% probability. Your own brother Julian is the child's biological father. The auditorium descended into utter chaos, but I had one last thing to add. Oh, and Isabel, I called out to her retreating figure. You should be more careful with your credit card statements, especially with the hotel bills and the receipts for jewelry, like that bracelet that once belonged to my mother, Eleanor. The heavy doors slammed shut behind her. Isabel was gone, but Marcus remained, a shattered statue staring at me, his reality dismantled in less than 5 minutes. To understand how we arrived at this moment of mutual destruction, you have to understand the man Marcus Harrison truly was. Life with Marcus had always been a series of evaluations. Even when Eleanor was alive, he managed our family like a business portfolio. Dinners were debriefings on grades and accomplishments. Holidays were strategic, scheduled events. Eleanor was the one who made our house a home. She was my buffer, my emotional translator, the only person who could coax genuine warmth from my rigid, controlling father. When she passed, that warmth vanished. Our silent dinners became unbearable. He would scroll through emails while I ate. Our conversations reduced to monosyllabic acknowledgments of my academic performance. Isabel arrived 6 months after the funeral. She was the antithesis of my mother, polished, cold, and calculating. Where Eleanor was warm sweaters and the scent of baking, Isabel was sharp designer suits and cloying, expensive perfume. You must be the son, she'd said upon meeting me, her eyes sweeping over me as if I were a piece of furniture that came with the house. They married 8 months later. The house began to change. Eleanor's warm, lived-in touch was systematically erased, replaced by Isabel's sterile, minimalist aesthetic. Photos of my mother were moved to a little-seen hallway, replaced by sterile, professional portraits of Marcus and his new bride. Then came the pregnancy. I was 16. We're having a baby, Isabel announced one morning, a smug smile playing on her lips. I had never seen Marcus look so purely joyful. He spun her around the kitchen, a display of affection I had craved for years but never received. This is our chance to build a real family, he told me later, the implication hanging in the air. I had been the trial run. This baby was the real thing. That was when I truly began to withdraw. I got a job, stayed late at the library, anything to avoid being in that house. Noah was born in March. Marcus was ecstatic. But during my visits to the hospital, I noticed something odd. His younger brother, Julian, was always there. He was charming, successful, and unmarried. And I recalled Isabel's favorite topic of conversation. The pieces started to click into place. The hushed phone calls Isabel would abruptly end. The shopping trips from which she returned with items from stores Julian favored. The confirmation came 3 months after Noah was born. It was past midnight, and I heard Isabel whispering on the phone. "I told Julian he has to stop sending gifts here," she hissed. "Marcus is getting suspicious. I know you want to be a part of his life, but we have to be careful. When Noah is older, we can tell him the truth about his real father." My blood ran cold. In that moment, I knew I couldn't confront them. Not yet. I had to be smarter, more methodical. If Marcus ever tried to cast me out, I would need an arsenal. The next 3 months were a masterclass in covert observation. I documented everything. Isabel began taking frequent outings, always with an excuse. But her stories never quite added up. I started paying attention to the home security system Marcus had installed. He thought it was for protection. He didn't realize it was also documenting his own betrayal. One afternoon, while he was at work, I found the system's password written on a sticky note tucked inside his desk planner. The cloud server was a gold mine. Hours of footage showed Julian visiting when Marcus was out, letting himself in with his own key. It showed them together. Their stolen moments of intimacy played out in our living room while the baby slept nearby. The most damning piece of evidence came from Isabel herself. In one recording, she was trying to soothe a crying Noah. "Shh, my love," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "Daddy Julian will visit you tomorrow. We just have to keep our secret. Your real father loves you very, very much." That recording solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about an affair. It was a calculated campaign to replace me and erase my mother's memory, all while deceiving a man who, for all his faults, believed he was raising his own son. Getting the DNA samples was the final step. Strands of hair from Julian's coat left in the closet. Hairs from Marcus's hairbrush. A used pacifier of Noah's. I found an online lab that, for a premium price, was less strict about documentation. The 3-week wait for the results was agonizing. The confirmation call came the week before graduation. I drove to a post office box I'd rented and sat in my car, staring at the sealed envelope. Inside was the truth, the weapon I knew I would need. I tucked it away, waiting for the inevitable confrontation Marcus and Isabel had been planning. I overheard them 3 nights before the ceremony. "At graduation is perfect," Marcus had said. "Public, final, it solves our problem." "With Caleb gone," Isabel had added with a satisfied sigh, "Noah can finally have the life he deserves, as the only son." They thought they were setting a trap for me. They had no idea that they were walking directly into mine. As I stood on that stage, diploma in hand, I felt a profound sense of release. I had my scholarship, a future I had earned on my own, and the grim satisfaction of knowing that the truth, no matter how brutal, had finally been brought into the light. The perfect world Marcus Harrison had built was nothing but a lie, and I had just handed him the pieces. 2 years have passed. The fallout was swift and total. The divorce was messy. Isabel and Julian disappeared, moving to another state to escape the scandal. Marcus lost his company, his brother, and the son he thought was his. He hit rock bottom. Then, 6 months ago, he showed up at my college dorm. He was a different man, humbled, broken, and filled with a regret so profound it was etched onto his face. We talked for hours. For the first time, he spoke not as a CEO or a strategist, but as a father who had failed. "Can you ever forgive me?" he asked, his voice thick with unshed tears. I thought of my mother, Eleanor, and her unwavering belief in compassion. I thought of the anger I had carried for so long. "I forgive you," I said. The forgiveness wasn't for him. It was for me. We're not the family I once dreamed of, but we are building something new from the wreckage, something honest. I learned that the greatest victory isn't about revenge. It's about refusing to be defined by the actions of others. It's about building a life so strong that the past no longer has the power to cast a shadow.